Tom Silva, the modest Massachusetts carpenter, was on your television screen for decades. However, he was leading an entirely different life behind the cameras. Even his closest admirers would be shocked to learn that he has been covertly sponsoring anything since 1999. Despite being pledged to quiet, 3 families are aware of the truth. It's about tragedies in Massachusetts, wildfires in California, and a foundation no one knew existed. Tom's greatest secret was exposed when the narrative was eventually released in 2025. You'll be shocked at what he's been doing with his wealth. You think you know Tom Silva, but this isn't him. On January 17, 1947, Tom Silva was born in Lexington, Massachusetts, in a household where all hands were valued and work never stopped. Dick, his older brother, was already learning the craft, and his father worked as a stone shaper. As the youngest child, Tom was raised in a household that valued skill and thought it was something you developed over time. He grew up seeing his father fix the stone walls surrounding historic New England homes. Additionally, he was able to mix mortar by hand by the time he reached 8. Their home, which felt more like a workshop than a home, was partially constructed by family members. Tom handled ancient tools that left splinters, stained furniture with his father, and gained experience in cautious carpentry by making little blunders. He began building little sheds with his uncles at the age of 10 after picking up a hammer by himself. Additionally, a chisel slid on his left hand, leaving him with a lifelong scar that served as a reminder of how early he started. For him, the years between 10 and 16 continued to grow. He never forgot one project in particular. His family made the decision to construct a fallout bunker beneath their former colonial house from 1787. The idea felt serious, and there was widespread fear of the Cold War. Using just shovels, Tom assisted in excavating a massive 20x 40 by 12-foot pit, removing large stones, framing the structure, and assisting with the final touches by hand. It took a full 2 years. Something settled within of him when it was finished. He was aware that his future lay in this work. Learning the rhythm of construction and the delight of witnessing something grow from the ground were just as important as understanding how things fit together. He was molded and ready for the world he would soon rule by these experiences. Tom took a different route after graduating from Lexington High School in 1965. Despite being offered a scholarship, he chose not to attend college. He believed that he would never learn the value of actual work in school. He was drawn to a craft by his family's heritage, and tales of his great-great-grandfather's involvement in the Battle of Lexington made him feel proud of his long-lasting labor. More than anything else, he had faith in his hands, and that faith kept him going. At the age of 19, Tom and his brother Dick made the decision to start their own business in 1966. With a single pickup truck and $500 worth of gear, they established Silva Brothers Construction in Arlington. Many of them took out loans. Initially, they grabbed whatever they could find. For local homeowners, little attic renovations, straightforward improvements, and minor adjustments. In the first year, 10 positions were obtained by word of mouth. People trusted the brothers after witnessing their methods. That modest beginning on a chilly winter's day served as the foundation for a business that would endure for many years. In Belmont, 2 years later, Tom expanded his kitchen for the first time on his own. He was forced to use only hand tools, no power saws or sophisticated machinery to mill custom oak cabinets. The lumber truck was delayed while he worked through a severe blizzard. Nevertheless, he completed the entire project in an only 12 days. For a new contractor, the $2,000 CERN from the assignment was a tremendous win. More doors opened after the homeowner informed the neighbors. Tom soon discovered that quality and perseverance could propel him farther than anything else. When Silva brothers started doing roofing work in 1970, Tom came up with a method that used old barnwood as a shingle base. Customers saved roughly 20% on material expenses because to that concept, which aided in the expansion of the company. However, all changed on a stormy day. Because of inadequate underbracing, a roof collapsed. Tom just missed getting hurt. He was shaken by the moment. It compelled the brothers to invest in improved techniques and raise their safety standards. The near catastrophe became a pivotal moment. They gained a reputation for carrying out tasks with greater support and meticulous planning after that day. Life continued on its way. Susan discreetly became the foundation of the company after Tom married her in 1972. She set up a little office in their garage and arranged the books. Tom could focus on more ambitious initiatives now that she was taking care of the numbers. When he worked on a barn conversion in 1974, he had to manually disassemble beams that were 200 years old. As the assignments grew bigger and more challenging, Susan maintained the company's stability. Their collaboration provided the company with a strength that skill by itself could not provide. Then, in 1975, there was unrest. The Silvas found themselves in a difficult situation after a client filed a lawsuit accusing them of having a defective foundation. To pay the fees, they had to mortgage their house. Tom visited the location every night for 3 months and rebuilt the entire building himself rather than arguing verbally. Stunned by his effort, the client dismissed the complaint and even gave them a recommendation. The town heard about it. Tom's image as someone who supported his work during difficult times was cemented. After a little over a decade, everything changed once more. Producer Russell Morash from This Old House witnessed Tom cutting dovetail joints at a trade fair in 1986. Mash was drawn to Tom's straightforward explanation of the method. Soon after, Morash and a camera team showed up at one of Tom's job sites without warning. There, he asked Tom to repair a deteriorating porch. While the cameras were rolling, Tom worked with calm focus to complete the repair in less than 2 hours. He was hired as the general contractor for the show after that unexpected test. He made his debut TV appearance a few months later. In March 1986, he made his debut in the first episode of Season 6. He used recycled chestnut wood to rebuild the railing of a Victorian staircase. The wood was aged and brittle, giving the task a delicate appearance. Tom took care of it easily, bringing the style back instead of changing it. People were astounded by his candor. Prior to entering the show, he acknowledged that he had never watched television. He learned everything from actual work. His straightforward style captivated viewers and quickly made him a popular. There were also tense moments. Bob Vila proposed the use of power nailers to expedite the 1987 Nantucket project. Tom declined. Like builders did in the 19th century, he intended to hand nail each of the 500 shiplap boards. The team was irritated and filming was delayed by a whole day as a result. Tom, however, thought the previous technique produced a tighter finish. His dedication gained him recognition and demonstrated the true values of the event. By 1988, viewers had discovered another aspect of Tom. He whistled folk songs from Portugal whenever he worked on precise details or sanded wood. It was a childhood habit. He was able to concentrate and remember his origins thanks to those songs. That little background sound became a favorite among fans. It became a part of his charm and felt like a window into his universe. A terrifying moment in 1989 almost ended tragically. Tom was working on external siding when a scaffold collapsed during the Bedford shoot. Just below was a cameraman. Taking the fall himself, Tom shoved the man aside. Despite having a shattered right wrist, he continued to work. He continued to rotate his wrist while recording, doing anything he could. The team never forgot it. That gesture demonstrated how much he valued the work and his staff. Tom Silva's ascent was not a dramatic one. It took place in a peaceful colonial house from 1790 in Massachusetts that had been overrun in 1990. The house has been abandoned to decay. Beams were worn, floors drooped, and nearly every corner appeared to be about to collapse. Tom didn't handle it like any other remodeling project. He handled it as if it were a time machine. Not because it was simpler, but because it was the correct thing to do. He searched recovered ship timbers for authentic pegged joints. After that, he cut mortise and tenon joints by hand for more than 400 hours. Hard on the hands, slow work. However, each cut adhered to the construction style of the late 18th century. People could sense its honesty after it was finished. It was covered by the New York Times. It was hailed by preservation associations. His reverence for traditional craft was imitated by builders throughout the Northeast. And that one deserted house became the point at which his name spread. In 1992, 2 years later, he returned to this ancient house with a problem that all old houses conceal: uneven surfaces. The majority of builders relied on standard shims and hoped for the best. Hope was not what Tom desired. He developed what became known as the Silva shim technique during the renovation of Belmont House. Thin and clever, he utilized laminated cedar wedges, stacking them so that he could precisely adjust the height without pushing the floor. That small adjustment had a significant impact. Cracks were halted, squeaks stopped. Rather than battling the house, it allowed the floor to settle with gentle movements. The difference was immediately noticeable to those watching at home. It was adopted and taught at New England's trade schools. This technique became the standard for fixing sagging floors in homes built before 1900. And it's still mentioned by carpenters today as if it were a silent norm that has been passed down. Then 1994 arrived, one of those years when things could have gone wrong. As composed as ever, Tom was using a handsaw to cut during a live demonstration on an old house. The blade shattered abruptly. It shot back, almost striking his thigh. He was severely cut. For a moment, the set froze, but Tom remained calm. Viewers enjoyed it because he remained steady. Not because it was frightening, but because he dressed the wound right there on camera and remarked, "Tools have minds of their own." The video kept playing in the backstage specials. Additionally, it promoted a greater discussion about tool safety on television and on actual job sites. The lesson was obvious. Although mishaps can occur, a true craftsman is able to maintain composure. He converted to a Newton attic by 1995 as a result of the show. The story took on a personal dimension this time. Charlie, his nephew, was studying under him. Custom corbels carved from butternut wood were required for the attic. For strength and appearance, Tom thought those corbels were important. Charlie resisted. To save time, he preferred prefabricated corbels. That suggestion struck a nerve. The two got into a heated argument. The sort of dispute that involves not just wood, but also your ideas about what a transaction ought to be. Speed versus tradition. New shortcuts versus old hands. Tom held the line in the end. The project was successful. Charlie later acknowledged that he became a better craftsman as a result of such rigorous criteria. Tom took an additional step in 1996 that further refined his work. He added a special mill shop to Silva Brothers. It was more than just a store with new equipment. He attended a traditional school. In order to achieve perfect edge glued panels, he personally calibrated a planer from the 1920s. These panels were included in a well-known Boston Museum exhibit that showcased American workmanship using period equipment and techniques. the hard way. The display attracted national notice. People realized that history did not have to be erased by contemporary renovations. Old houses could be given new life without destroying their souls. And Tom was repeatedly demonstrating it. As the years went by, the labor continued. His first Ask This Old House segment debuted in October 2002. The project involved fixing a slate roof that kept leaking in a historic house in Warren, Massachusetts. People believe slate is impenetrable since it can last for more than a century. But in the details, Tom discovered the truth. Exactly 47 slate tiles had been fractured by decades of thermal expansion. The stress was exacerbated by the roof deck's inadequate ventilation. He didn't use inexpensive replacements to fix it. In keeping with the vintage 19th century style, he replaced each damaged tile with a handcrafted duplicate. It required specialized instruments and several days. Viewers gained knowledge that was both straightforward and effective. Real slate work is uncommon for a reason. Even the toughest materials require maintenance. He was called in by another resident in the spring of 2005. The hardwood flooring were warping at this location, which was close to the coast. The boards were being lifted and cupped by high humidity, and a complete replacement would have been extremely expensive. Tom took his time pulling it out. Rather, he constructed a covert dehumidification system and excavated a hole 24 inches deep around the room's perimeter. The concept was inspired by 18th century sales tactics employed to safeguard grain stockpiles. New materials, old wisdom. The wood cooled down, the moisture decreased, and the homeowners were spared roughly $10 in future repairs. People who lived in humid areas quickly adopted the solution, which seemed like a cunning secret. But all of this work behind the camera came at a price. After years of pushing through work, bending over, and lifting, it eventually caught up with him. He underwent 2 major back surgery in a short period of time in 2007. He had to leave the set to recuperate, but he returned a few weeks after the second surgery. He refrained from displaying the discomfort on television. He continued to demonstrate the same tactics using braces and cautious placement even after the crew's schedule changed. In a later behind-the-scenes special, that comeback served as a reminder to all viewers that competence is not the only factor in the deal. It's all about endurance, and every good job you witness benefits your body. Tom continued to advocate for striking a balance between the ancient and the new by 2010. In a home from the 1920s, he oversaw a series on energy-efficient windows. The proprietors desired comfort without sacrificing the house's uniqueness. Vinyl windows were trendy and inexpensive, but Tom didn't like them. After installing airtight seals, he selected specially tinted mahogany sashes that complemented the original woodwork. Heating costs decreased by almost 30% over the first year. Hundreds of dollars were saved as a result. The main idea was straightforward. If constructed and sealed properly, traditional materials can outperform newer ones. Even ancient homes can seem modern without having a contemporary appearance. A rainy shoot in Maine in the fall of 2012 forced him to make yet another snap decision. The storm was already on top of them, and a house was in danger of water damage. Tom used salvaged copper flashing to construct a temporary gutter system. In the rain, they trimmed it to suit the roof edge and fastened it with special nails. It felt like a rescue mission because of the way it was recorded. Because it was quick, inexpensive, and smart, the video went popular among do-it-yourselfers. Additionally, recycling copper rather than purchasing new parts gave it a neat, useful vibe that appealed to consumers. Silva brothers had expanded to the point that Tom felt prepared to hand over day-to-day operations to family by 2015. Charlie took over the operating reins from him. The business now employed 25 people and generated almost $5 million in revenue annually. Tom did not vanish even then. He went to job sites once a week and conducted his own audits. In 2016, that practice saved a project. In a two-story addition, he noticed a significant framing error. If no one intervened, a misaligned load-bearing wall might have resulted in a structural catastrophe. Tom managed to stop it. The crew discovered that no detail is too tiny if you want to sleep at night after saving the homeowner from a six-figure catastrophe. The business changed once more in 2018 as a result of global changes. Silva brothers changed course due to the growing demand for green buildings. Tom oversaw the construction of an Arlington Solar integrated garage. It was more than just roof-mounted panels. He made bamboo trusses by hand, selecting them for their strength and low carbon footprint. Then it was put to the test by nature. With winds exceeding 100 meters, a Category 2 hurricane made landfall. The garage remained stable. No significant harm. The project became evidence that traditional craft could continue into the future without losing its core. And it was recognized with a regional sustainability award. They were taught yet another difficult lesson in 2019. It's about trust this time. For a significant project, Silva brothers bought high-quality lumber. What came was feeble and broken and thin. A swindle involving suppliers. A total of $50,000 was lost. Tom pushed for an inquiry, confronted the vendor, and refused to pay. He was able to get the most of the money back after heated negotiations and legal pressure. Then he tightened all of their supplier rules. As a warning to other contractors, the story went viral. Good materials are the foundation of good work, and you cannot be indifferent to this. By 2020, Tom was considering legacy more than growth. He demonstrated how to make dovetail joints to his 14-year-old grandson on a basic workstation in his backyard. He demonstrated the antiquated technique he had perfected decades earlier. However, he also wore gloves and eye protection this time. Things he disregarded when he was younger. Despite being a small scene, it had a significant meaning. You pass it all forward jointly because it's important for your family, your craft, and your safety. Then another demanding position arrived in 2022. The restoration of a historic Lexington Inn was awarded to Silva brothers. The building was supported by 300-year-old pine beams that, if damaged, could not be restored. Tom was in charge of the reinstallation, maintaining the original appearance but strengthening each beam for seismic safety. In order to comply with current regulations without altering the course of history, they employed specially fitted steel brackets concealed within the wood. It was appreciated by preservationists. It was praised by city leaders. It must have felt like a complete circle for Tom. In 1990, he began by rescuing a house from 1790. And decades later, he was still performing the same thing with the same cautious hands. But on a larger scale, with the same steady hands he had used for decades, Tom Silva entered 2023. And he transported them into a world that was quite different from the one he had grown up in. He did more than simply observe the new walls emerging from nozzles when he traveled to Austin for a special segment about 3D printed homes. He desired to experience them, so he took a drill and gave the joints a test. The printed layers appeared quick and fluid at first. However, he sensed holes that could only be filled by genuine joinery as he put his weight into the drill. He said that tradition and machinery might not be the only things that shape the future. If both cooperated, it might be more powerful. The episode, which broadcast in early 2025, showed weeks of arguments amongst builders. He was accused by some of holding on to the past, He observed something that they were ignoring, according to others. All agreed, however, that he was making the sector slow down and reflect. When Tom entered the trade show for his masterclass on woodworking in 2024, Boston came alive. Since sunrise, people had been waiting in line. The hall was crowded with about 5,000 faces by the time he hit the floor. The expo had never seen a larger audience. Tom took his time. After laying out a cherry board, he shaped it into a dining table over the course of 2 days. He hand-planed for 48 hours straight, which was his high point. People leaned in to watch the grain rise under his touch as the sound of metal striking wood filled the room. Following that, over 80% of participants stated that they intend to go back to hand planning rather than using machines. Traditional tool sales increased by 35% at tool stores. And it all began with Tom spending 2 exhausting days moving a plane around one board. However, he was put to the test more so than any exhibition in early 2025. During a siding job in Massachusetts in January, he shattered his hip after falling off a ladder. Physicians cautioned him that it frequently takes months for those over 70 to recover. He paid attention. Then he disregarded the schedule. He returned to Ask This Old House 6 weeks later, showcasing his new ladder technique to the audience. He introduced them to ladder checkpoints, slow climbing, and modest stairs. He paused every 10 feet to catch his breath, check his balance, and then resumed his movement. He received messages from older do-it-yourselfers who said that his candor prevented them from making the same error he had. He collaborated with his nephew Charlie on a tiny house project in New England shortly after his return. They desired no waste. Each board was important. The entire frame was made of salvaged barnwood, and any leftovers were used to make shelves and brackets. The build evolved into a 10-part web series. More than 1,000 do-it-yourselfers saw it, and many of them were forced to reconsider how much they tossed away. Charlie claimed that Tom's waste-nothing rule was the key. Due to the build's popularity, tiny homes of a similar design began to appear all over the area. Despite all of that effort, Tom continued to consider a more profound idea. He was still conducting quality inspections at Silva Brothers at the age of 78 by the end of 2025. Rumor had it that he would be retiring shortly. He gave a headshake. He declared that as long as he had breath, he would continue to construct. He also started writing a memoir. He wished to share tales of his blunders, morals, patience, and the silent times that molded him. A single faulty nail that previously resulted in a disastrous home inspection was mentioned in one early extract. He approached every board differently after that. Publishers have already hailed the memoir as a must-read before its 2026 release. He led a kinder life away from the spotlight. He and his wife Susan have been going to Portuguese festivities in Massachusetts for almost 50 years. They participated in the Provincetown Portuguese Festival, now in its 78th year, every June. Over 10,000 individuals attended the festival in 2025, which took place from June 27 to June 29. In the 1970s, Tom learned how to craft wooden rosaries from his grandfather. He was frequently asked to demonstrate his carving techniques by festival organizers. He was viewed by the locals as an integral element of the celebration. At home, he withdrew into his tiny Arlington workshop, which was stocked with 1950s-era tools. He repaired vintage levels, chisels, and planes that were frequently over a century old. According to tool collectors, items similar to his might fetch hundreds or even thousands of dollars. In 2015, he paid $50 at a barn auction for his rare remote handsaw from the 1820s, which was now valued at about $5,000. He gave the proceeds from the sale of numerous repaired tools to trade scholarships. He used materials from their respective eras to bring each tool in his workshop to life, each with its own tale. Then, even his closest admirers were taken aback by the revelation. He accumulated 200 antique saws by 2025. It grew to become one of the nation's biggest private saw collections. Sitting in the middle of it, gleaming like a museum exhibit, was the cherished remote hand saw. However, there was something more significant concealed underneath that pastime. He had been covertly funding fire recovery efforts for families in Massachusetts and California since 1999. Because of him, 3 families were able to rebuild their homes. He was never a creditor. Only eyewitnesses who witnessed the Silva Brothers Foundation intervene without requesting gratitude told others about it. His influence was widespread even before he used social media. His methods were imitated by do-it-yourself YouTube channels, which amassed over 10 million views annually. At exhibits, people looked for vintage saws and planes, studied his craftsmanship, and watched old episodes. Because of him, a lot of tools sold out. Many people who started carpentry said it began after watching Tom fix something on TV, and forums were ablaze with discussions over whether his techniques were still the best. He entered a new kind of stage in April 2024. His 38-year adventure on this historic home was recognized, and he was admitted into the National Housing Hall of Fame. According to surveys, his work encouraged over 50 million viewers to attempt safe do-it-yourself tasks. He became a part of the history of housing in America. This was no little honor, however. He became one of the most reliable voices in the building industry as a result. He continued to teach despite all of this. He conducted a patience-based program with 20 apprentices each year. He has been training around 250 carpenters since 2010. According to data, they made 15% less joinery errors than people who had not been taught his methodical and meticulous methodology. A generation that prized accuracy and shunned shortcuts was formed by these workshops. He started discussing a last special for this historic home in July 2025. He stated that the special would air in 2026 and that he would soon take a back seat. Unseen outtakes of set stories, co-star interviews, and recollections from homeowners whose walls he restored would all be included in the roughly 90-minute film. In search of unique moments, producers combed through thousands of hours of footage.